Hey everyone, welcome back. Matt and Anthony from the Pitti Group Wealth Management. This is the Finance Things in Life. And today we're here to talk about preparing the next generation. So like how we talked before with, helping your aging parents, this is for those clients that are older that really want to help prepare their kids to handle their finances and their caregiving. So it's helping your children help you. Yes. Like Jerry Maguire said, help me help you.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well put.
You like that?
Yeah. One of those conversations that we seem to have more frequently than not, having a large client base that's fairly older, having those conversations, being involved with their kids, very important conversations to have, making sure that everyone is on board. And like we had mentioned before, it all starts by having the conversation early.
Yeah. And I think this conversation, unlike the last podcast we did where it was children having the conversation with their parents, this is parents having the conversation with their children. And I feel like this conversation is so much easier.
So much easier. Unbelievably easier.
Yeah. But it's your, as the parent that's aging, it's your responsibility to take the lead. Mm-hmm. And, you can really set the tone and kind of be in the driver's seat of where the conversation goes and what you want, to happen as you age, and everything else. So more conversations I have with clients, can't stress it enough, like set up that meeting, just have a conversation with the kids. We can do a Zoom meeting if they're out of town, you can bring them into the office and it can just be a warm introduction and just so they have an idea of what's going on. Yep.
Yeah. It's not like the first meeting that you have needs to be, making decisions and, putting a final nail in the details. It's just that warm introduction. This is the advisor that I work with. This is the accounts that we currently have. This is my general plan. And just start to have that conversation. This is what I would like to happen. Mm-hmm. And then just proceed from there.
Yep. Another big thing to do is this is the time to make sure your will's up to date, beneficiaries up to date, healthcare proxies, power of attorneys, making sure everything's kind of buttoned up. One of the things that clients, don't think about though is, we could add a person of authorization on the account. So mm-hmm. This could be someone that really doesn't have any ability to make changes or move money or change the investments, but there's someone that can just kind of check in and give an update on the account. So, if something were to happen to you or you're traveling, your child can reach out and say, hey, I don't know if you knew, but my parents are traveling. So in case they reach out to you or you can't get a hold of them, this is why. Or, they recently had an accident and, their health may be declining a little bit, so just to keep an eye out for it. So, just someone that has the ability to kind of update your advisor or CPA or attorney on what's going on.
Mm-hmm. On the other side of it, having a conversation with your advisor and saying, hey, can you have a conversation with my kids and give them a little bit of financial literacy, maybe a little financial education. In some instances, it could be very wealthy parents and it could be kids that haven't quite gotten to become high income earners at the time. So sometimes in scenarios, parents could pass away, kids could inherit a decent amount of money and go spend it. Mm-hmm. Their eyes light up. They've never seen that much money before and, they want to take the full IRA distribution from the beneficiary IRA. They want to go buy a new car, go to Vegas, wherever it might be.
Sometimes they don't even realize the tax consequences.
I was just about to say tax consequences for taking out a lump sum. So having that conversation and just understanding, what are the consequences if you were to take that money, what a strategy would be to make sure we kind of mitigate those issues. And just have education. This is supposed to be a tool that they could use if they were to inherit this money. So what can you do with that? How can you help generations mm-hmm. with that money instead of the next generation, further generation? So, How are we going to compound this money if they don't need it right away? How are you going to help pay for educational expenses, paying bills that need to be paid, or even the parents' bills that need to be paid, things along those lines. There's a lot of misinformation out there, so having those conversations early can really solidify what information needs to be had.
Yeah. And sometimes it's as the parent, your kids, often, maybe not always, but often look up to you, as the one that can kind of provide that guidance. So maybe, they don't have an advisor they're currently working with, but if they are working, they probably have a 401k, and, they probably need guidance there.
Mm-hmm.
So it is something where you can, start the process of making that introduction, giving them, the ability to have some financial support, some financial guidance. And then so they're kind of mentally preparing and financially preparing for their retirement. And, inevitably when they inherit this money, they are a little bit more prepared.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's I don't want to say no better person, but one of the top people that would know about, that financial plan is going to be your advisor. So if you're working with your advisor and you've already had these discussions on kind of, what you'd like to do, we've been working with you through retirement, through weddings and all kinds of different occasions. We have a general understanding of what's most important to you. So when these things happen and this money gets passed down to your children, we've already got a general understanding of the family makeup and dynamics and what's important to everyone. And that can really help the familiarness of that side of things. So getting your advisor involved early, introduction to the kids, that's vital in making it more of a smooth transition.
Mm-hmm. And then, laying out kind of a plan as far as your expenses, your bills, kind of doing that family love letter that we talked about is so important. So, if anything were to happen to you, your kids can kind of step right in and start paying your bills or know where things are located. So, you don't get behind on bills or, you miss payments or anything like that.
Yep. Maybe you have charitable donations that you want to make. Make sure your kids know about those. Understanding who your CPA is, if there's certain, tax consequences for certain moves, your attorney, things along those lines. Making sure your kids have that information so it's just a seamless transition.
Yeah. Organizing your accounts, your online access, most accounts, or most people view their accounts online. I mean, some people still love their paper statements. So whether it's paper statements, still having those organized, or, if online access, making sure, you have that information in a way that, your kids can either access it or they have that information so they can log in as well. And whether it's view only or where they can, kind of be running the show, whatever you're comfortable with. But you really need to organize those online accounts and online access.
Yeah, because a lot of these accounts have two-factor authentication. It might send a password to a cell phone or an email address. So making sure that they've got access, or you change the phone number on it, or have access to the email, so they're able to get control of the passcode and be able to log in successfully, is also vitally important.
Yeah. And, depending on age, this would be the time to start for, long-term care planning. Whether it's long-term care insurance, life insurance, what your goals are as far as living, whether it's, assisted living, or if you want to stay in the home as long as possible. This is where you can kind of dictate what you want.
Yep.
It's not at the point where it's too late and now the kids are like, well, I don't know, did mom want to go into a nursing home, or does she want to stay at home? Does she eventually want to go back home? Do they want to stay together? Mom and dad want to stay together? So having this conversation with your kids early and saying, listen, your father and I would like to stay in the home as long as possible. It's a ranch. We're putting in a wheelchair ramp. We're changing out the tubs to be handicap accessible. We're preparing the house for us to live in as long as possible. And then when the time comes, then we want to go here.
Yeah.
And, and planning for that and having your finances, your financials in a way that kind of prepares for that. This is the time to do it.
Right. This is how we're going to afford it. This is where we're paying it from. Maybe we have long-term care insurance that's going to cover this amount. This is how I'd like the money spent. Just so you're not in a position where money's getting spent elsewhere.
Right.
Now you don't have money for long-term care. Things go haywire. Having that conversation early about what you want.
Mm-hmm.
Making sure everyone's on the same page. And then also at the same time, be open to feedback.
Right.
Maybe that's not the best way to go.
Right.
Maybe have a conversation with your kids. Like, maybe the parents' goal is, I want to move into your house and spend time with you.
Right.
And maybe the kids are like, wait a second,
Yeah.
that's not exactly meshing up with what I want.
Yeah.
Be open to a little bit of feedback as well.
Yeah. Can you imagine, like, you have family, and all of a sudden your parents can no longer live in their own. They're like, well, I was just planning on living with you. And
I had this conversation with a client.
Yeah.
We were talking about what it is that they wanted to do. She has a house locally, and she's going to sell it and move in with her son. And I was like, well, I assumed you've had this conversation. She's like, not yet. I was like, I highly recommend you do, just in case.
Right.
He obviously doesn't know. But yeah, that does get looked past a few times.
Yeah. And, and really to have a plan B as well, because, maybe everyone's on board with that. But I don't know. I feel like, mom comes up to visit me every once in a while and stays with me. And, it can only last so long before I think, maybe it's time for you to go back home, or, so maybe everyone's on the same page. Be like, yeah, mom and dad are going to move in with me. But
built an in-law suite.
Yeah. But if it doesn't work out, there has to be a plan B, right. Okay, we're going to do assisted living, or, maybe it's just a retirement community.
Yeah.
Which, I've had this conversation with other clients numerous times. A lot of the older generation is so against moving out of their house. They've been there for years, especially if they've already had one spouse pass away. They want to hold on to those memories. But some of the best things you can do is go into, whether it's assisted living or retirement community, so you have those other people, you have that interaction.
Mm-hmm. Staying mentally sharp. They've got activities, things that you can do, people you can communicate with, having that
get you up and moving. You're not just
sitting at home waiting for the day to go by. It's incredible the mental decline that you can have when you're not having that interaction, that brain function that you need to keep mentally sharp.
Yeah, and that and that's a conversation that needs to be had ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
Simplifying is another big thing. Organizing your accounts, consolidating, to make things easier, not only for yourself, but for your spouse or your beneficiaries.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe at the time it made sense to have an old 401k here and 2 IRAs there and
that's
5
how they
IRAs.
diversify.
Right. But when you have to remember now to take your required minimum distribution from 7 different accounts, it's as you age, that's the last thing you want to do. So consolidating, simplifying organizing your accounts to something that's more manageable is so important.
Yeah. 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 So important to just more clarity. You're not calling 4 different organizations to take an RMD. You're not tracking, expenses coming out of this account at M&T, this account at ESL, this account at Chase. Just have it all in one place. It may be a pain to move it all over, but it'll be more of a pain to do it later on down the road. Keeping up to date with estate plan is,
Right.
I think, a huge one. We've had a lot of conversations where we'll meet with people and they say, yeah, I've got a will done 15 years ago. That's all set. Don't worry about it because it's kind of a checkbox. Or I did a POA a while ago. Don't need to worry about that. Making sure you're reviewing those documents, your beneficiaries.
All right. Children, grandchildren.
Yeah.
I mean, life is forever changing. There's marriages, divorces, children, are born and people are passing away, and it's easy to forget who you may have listed as, your beneficiaries, or even, custodians for your beneficiaries. If you have minors, and maybe that custodian is no longer alive, and it's like, what are you going to do?
Right. Maybe they moved across the country and you just didn't even think about it. Like, oh, yeah, that person's a custodian of my kid's account. Maybe that's not the best way of going about it. Maybe there's a fallout in the relationship and you didn't realize that you made them a custodian or they're your primary beneficiary. Right. Those are things that it doesn't hurt to review.
Another thing that, sometimes ties into the family love letter, that tool that we use for clients, is to kind of share a letter of intent, what your goals are with your assets, or maybe it's just a letter to your family members, to kind of share, thoughts or things that maybe you wish you had said or you wanted to say, and, maybe now's the time. But, there's things that you can kind of do or prepare ahead of time. And, maybe there's something specific in your will or your trust that you feel that needs to be explained. That would be the time to do it. And, maybe it's, not because you love one person or one child more than the other, but maybe there's a reasoning behind what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So, because, the last thing you want to do is, something, if you were to pass away, and then, your beneficiaries, get their inheritance, and it's like, well, why did Jimmy get more than Susie? And it's like, oh, they must have loved Jimmy more than Susie.
Right. You can really disrupt the family dynamic and just say, see, it's your problem now.
So, and maybe it's a letter to share while you're still alive, or maybe it's when you pass, but, thinking about if there's something that you'd like to share with your family, and not putting it off, because you never know when your time's going to come, and,
you're not going to have that opportunity to say what you want to say. Yeah. And then I'd say one of the most important things is just to have a trusted team on your side, making sure that they all are aware of each other. So a trusted advisor, financial advisor, a trusted CPA, a trusted attorney, making sure they're in communication is another vital piece to make sure that these wishes that you have are carried out in the way that you would like.
Yeah. The earlier you can have this conversation, the sooner you can build that team. That team can be working with your children, or at least know who they are, and start that relationship, the better for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
It's never going to be seamless. There's always going to be some hiccups or bumps in the road, but it's going to be a smoother ride than if you don't prepare or plan ahead of time. So build that team, that trust between everyone is so vital.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're going to take anything away from this episode, it's communicate with your family, build that team around you, and plan earlier the better.
Right. Yeah, 100%. Like we said earlier, help me help you. So
thanks, Jerry.
Yeah, right. But appreciate you guys tuning in, and obviously if you guys have questions, or if you want us to help facilitate this conversation between you and your kids, or you and your grandkids, whatever it is, we're more than happy to do that, because we feel it's so important. We see it every day. Every day we're coming across things that come up in these types of issues or events. So we're more than happy to kind of give you our guidance and answer any questions.
Yeah, well put.
All right. Take care. Appreciate you guys tuning in.
Thank you.